A warm welcome to everyone joining us for this special interview where we get to drill down on how the world is changing with a lens on breakthrough technologies, artificial intelligence, and cybersecurity. And we have a guest who is very well suited to answer some of those questions for us. With us is Dr. Peter Highnam. He's the Deputy Director at Darpa, that is the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. Many of you will be familiar with Darpa, if not the agency, then certainly with the trailblazing innovation that has come from Darpa and that really has triggered seismic shifts in our society, for example, the internet. So Mr. Highnam, welcome. Good to have you with us.
Great to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
I'd like to start right out with the question of new technology and innovations. It is a space that is, let's say, very crowded, very busy at the moment, and often really overshadowed by Silicon Valley. So I'd like to ask you to cut through some of the buzz for us. From the perspective of Darpa, what are some of the new technologies that you are perhaps banking on, and also some of the segments of society that you see as most ripe for innovation, so most likely to be upended, if you will, in the coming years?
So I'll begin by saying that we're an element of the Department of Defense. So our focus is very naturally on national security. And my answers will be in that vein. Okay. We have, many people talk about Silicon Valley, or more generally about industry moving ahead in many areas. And it's true. And we watch, we work with them, we build on them, and we invest in places that are either they will not, or we invest to move things ahead where they may not have, there may be still too much risk for them to be there, or there may not be an adequate return on investment, and sometimes both, of course. So for example, AI technologies, cyber, as you described, and I hope I get a little chance to go into some more detail. Very widely invested in, a lot of companies working there for sure. But then there are other areas, for example, hypersonic systems. No commercial application I'm aware of at this time. So something that absolutely that we invest in. And then working at the intersection very much again, places low Earth orbit to do a variety of different things. Where we build on and with industry, but our mission, the defense mission, is paramount, and the things that we'll do there will have a different angle to them.
There are so many different layers to DARPA's defense mission, as you've just described, and one of them is indeed healthcare. And you yourself have a background in public health. And in the past, you've highlighted DARPA's foresight, if you will, in anticipating future challenges. So, for example, working on onshoring healthcare manufacturing or on vaccines. So with an eye to the current pandemic and perhaps to preventing future pandemics, what are DARPA's priorities in healthcare?
Right. As you described, about 10 years ago, DARPA invested in mRNA vaccines and other types of vaccine production as well, actually. And then antibody discovery and characterization and production. So the way DARPA's mission is to prevent and to impose technological surprise, strategic surprise. So it's our job to be in there early, maybe not the earliest, but be in there early. So bringing things forward then specific to your question, when we talk about manufacture of biomedical countermeasures, there's a lot that can be done. We were discovering with relatively small systems onshore with onshore inputs, if you like. And this came directly not because we were aiming for that, but because of the defense mission, which is the need to provide medications in the field in austere conditions, perhaps on a ship, where there isn't a cold chain to take the materials forward. So bringing that back into the civilian space, as you said earlier, to be not intentionally disruptive, but to provide a new way of doing business because it makes sense to be able to work entirely onshore with maybe scarce or expensive medications that otherwise would come from overseas in times of great global need. So I'm very encouraged by the work that I'm seeing there.
Does DARPA consider, for example, within the defense portfolio, climate change to be part of the threat assessment?
Absolutely. And this is one of the highest priorities for the department. In terms of what we're doing in DARPA today, we have a program called Refence, which is responsive to the need of, I think there are north of 1,700 military locations, and some number of those are on coastal areas. So Refence is about how to naturally rebuild offshore reefs, both in the structural sense, but also in the living sense, in a way that accommodates the changing environmental conditions, and thereby to reduce the force of waves up against shore-based structures. That's one of the things that we're doing.
That's really interesting. So we've talked a bit about some of the fields that you're working in that are part of DARPA's purview. I'd like to ask you, many have tried to replicate DARPA's success in innovation, being really a pioneer in so many fields. Few have really managed to do so. How do you view similar European efforts? If you look at, for example, the UK's ARPA, or here in Germany, we have the Federal Agency for Disruptive Innovation that has just started. There was the Cyber Innovation Hub within the Defense Ministry here as well. So how do you view some of these similar efforts on this end?
There have also been multiple attempts in the US as well. For me, there's a very simple recipe to replicate DARPA, and it's been done in the US at least once, perhaps twice, depending who you ask. To have the mission replicated is one thing. The context will determine exactly what the institution or the organization looks like and how it works. There are a few simple rules or guidelines that the original ARPA was created under, and so temporary people, project-based, no fixed assets. So that's no labs to keep busy, no fixed ways of particular technologies. Everybody here, myself included, will change out within 4 or 5 years of arriving. So it's always staying on the leading edge, driving things. And there's very little inertia in this system. Other places, the European organizations that you described, as they're being designed, their contexts are different. For us, we have defense and national security as the mission partner. It's an enormous focus, and again, that's the other key thing. We're focused on this, and the other capabilities, civilian capabilities, societal changing capabilities, spin out of those. Not that we design it that way. It's just we make something happen, and it takes off. I like seeing experiments. An R&D guy, and the case I know for replication, we're in the US, and if you replicate the model, you can get the same results, which is actually pretty interesting. If you change it, you get something else, and it's going to be what you need.
Okay, so narrow focus I'm hearing there. If I could ask you about one particular field where there is great potential, artificial intelligence, something you already mentioned at the very start. Not only does it have great potential, it is also a field that poses some risk. And when we discuss artificial intelligence, the perspective tends to swing from wildly utopian to perhaps disturbingly dystopian. So I'd like to ask how DARPA tries to make the most of this potential while addressing some of the concerns. So data security, governance, and ethics.
In 1960, DARPA started investing in what became the field of artificial intelligence. So we've been in this business for a long time. We knew back when it started what we wanted to do, and that was to turn a room full of 1960s beige-colored computers and spinning tapes, but with wonderful calculation capabilities, into a partner that could have that capability but be able to interact with decision makers and warfighters at the same speed that another highly capable human or human team would do. And that's been the driving angle all the way through the first wave of AI, which was rule-based systems, expert systems. Now we're in pattern matching and such with machine learning approaches, and we're exploring what will come next. So that's the long view that we've taken, and Darpa or ARPA along the way for 63 years has been investing in this space. We now have about 250 or so running research efforts at Darpa at any time. In 2018, when we launched a major new push in AI to reinvigorate what we were doing, we announced about $400 million a year over 5 years as work we would do. And looking at the programs we had at the time, maybe a third involved AI, either advancing the state of the art or applying it. Now taking a look is over half of our programs. And that wasn't because we said we should do that. That happened to be the best way of doing business to achieve the technical results needed in that particular program. We care a lot about the field, the nascent field still of engineering around AI systems. So it's all of the advantages and weaknesses of any computing system, any big IT system, and now it's a new type of, not new anymore, but layers of software and data, as you say, on top of that, all of which come with the need for an engineering discipline to make this work and make it work well and reliably. And then with national security, as they say, the adversary gets a vote. And we need to be mindful not just of our own fallibilities and biases, but also of those of others.
Okay.
One thing, in addition, we have the notion of ethical, legal, and societal implications, and we form panels around some of our programs, outside experts who can advise us on particular issues. And we regard that as very important.
What about broader efforts to put safeguards in place as we see these massive jumps in the technological capabilities of AI? We've seen the EU, for example, put together a proposal for AI regulation this year, and it was the first of its kind. We've also seen the German Council on Foreign Relations here present an agenda recently for EU-US tech cooperation. That would include tech industrial policy, a digital rule book of sorts. Do you welcome these styles of proposals? Is this the right broad approach to take?
The policy level, yeah, is clearly important. I'm an R&D guy, and I want systems that work. And I want us to be guided by external expertise on, again, ethics, legal, societal implications, because those are very, very important. And to protect us from, as researchers, one can become very focused on what one is doing, and to always be mindful of objective measures, both the qualitative ones and the quantitative ones, to ensure that we produce robust technologies that work as in the ways that we say they will do their job.
I think we could spend, quite a lot of time talking about artificial intelligence, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about cybersecurity as being a key field of defense as well. We have seen cybersecurity attacks, ransomware attacks on the Colonial Pipeline in the US, JBS meat packing company as well, which are highly concerning. How is DARPA working on cybersecurity and resilience?
We have a fair number, and always have, in cyber, both in in defense and then in terms of speed, in terms of recognition of issues. A lot of universities work with us on these topics. Enhanced attribution was one program that's well along, very mature at this point. Again, at any time we have quite a few cyber-related programs. I want to your point, it's beyond. It's more than just about computers as such. So, for example, we've just completed a program on electrical infrastructure, as in electrical grids, resilience. So if there's how do you recover a grid during a cyber attack when your own sensors may be lying to you? Right? So that produced a lot of real world experiments with the real gear, and lessons learned and tool sets distributed out to utilities, I think not just in the US, but overseas as well. And then broadening it one step further into information operations, so for deep fakes and so on. We've had a sequence of programs or sequence of efforts here helping to discover fakes and characterize them, both in terms of statistical properties of data sets and imagery, but also looking at now the semantics of the scenes to identify discrepancies and flag things for people to be aware of this particular image or video, because it's maybe isn't quite what it's supposed to be.
And Dr. Highnam, perhaps a philosophical last question, if you'll allow it. You said you're an R&D guy. How do you see the effort to restore trust in science and technology when both are, in this era, considered biased or politicized in many societies? How do you approach that?
Transparency, rigor in process, and oversight in the sense of transparency. Be clear about what you're doing, why you're doing it, measure the heck out of it, make sure you understand what you've got, and do truth to power and truth to people who need to know. That's what R&D is supposed to do, and I think people have been doing that all along. There's been no cessation of those practices, but we need to ensure we communicate. Again, for an R&D guy, that can be hard.
Transparency, rigor, communication, I think all very important messages there. Dr. Highnam, thank you so much for joining us and being part of this TDI program and sharing your analysis, your insights with us. Very happy to have you with us. And for our viewers, please let us know what you thought. On Facebook and Twitter, our hashtags are TDI21 and Choicing the New. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.